All right. Okay, so now we're into section 10, the action items, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Little to lead the discussion on this. Well, I guess we need a motion, don't we? And then we'll have. No?
Well, let me, if you don't
Okay.
mind me introducing it.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for just a moment. Since March, the men and women of our district have faced unprecedented adversity and have done so with grace and a commitment to both our students and our community. I am thankful for their work and for their willingness to learn, to adapt, and to be flexible in the face of incredible challenges. They have created new learning platforms. They have instructed in both virtual and face-to-face environments. They have prepared and delivered meals. They have kept our buildings clean. They have worked to help the social-emotional learning for our students. And they work each and every day to keep us healthy and safe. Because of their response to these challenges tonight, we would like to recommend a one-time payment for the new and additional job duties and responsibilities our teachers and staff have had to assume during the pandemic. And I'd also like to take a moment to say how thankful I am to this board for being interested in bringing this idea forward. I know that has been talked about multiple times, and I'm thankful for a board that is willing to advocate on behalf of our employees. And while we will never be able to pay our debt to our employees, we are excited to demonstrate our appreciation in a meaningful way. And so, Madam Chair, I would like to say we are recommending tonight for this one-time payment, and then so let's do a motion, and then we'll have Mr. Salters walk us through.
All right. Do I hear a motion regarding an employee one-time payment?
Madam Chair, in light of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic since March of this year on all district operations and the delivery of educational services, and in recognition of the new and/or additional job duties and responsibilities our teachers and staff have had to assume due to the pandemic, often under very difficult circumstances, I hereby move that the board amend the 2020-2021 general fund budget to provide a one-time payment for extraordinary service due to the COVID-19 pandemic in the following categories. 1, approximately $1,000 for all full-time employees. 2, approximately $500 for all part-time employees working less than 30 hours per week. And 3, approximately $500 for substitute employees that work 45 days in either semester. Categories 1 and 2 will be paid for all active employees as of December 1st, 2020. Category 3 will be paid at the end of each semester.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. All right. Mr. Salters, would you like to give us a little bit more information, and we'll have some discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, the concept of this one-time payment obviously has been discussed, and you've asked us to look into this, and so we've done so. One of the things that I would point out for this payment is that we are paying the FICA portion of the payment for the employee and the employer, and we're paying the minimum withholdings for state and federal for these payments, so that the employee will see the numbers that Mr. Oswald indicated in his motion in their checks. And so you may see some tax burden later when you file taxes if your withholdings are larger than those minimums, but we felt it was very important to make sure that the employee got the numbers that were listed in the motion. So I want to point that out. Certainly during this time, the question comes obviously to your mind probably as to where this funding is coming from. And so through careful analysis of our budget, at the end of last year, we had several categories of revenue that came in over projection, which is always a good thing. And these were not COVID-related categories, as I would call them. Not CARES Act funding. These weren't special one-time allocations of revenue indicated for PPE or anything like that. These were what I would consider standard sources of revenue that we receive. And so these revenue streams came in over projection. And so we were able to use some of that funding in combination with a number of expenditures which we saved on. As you recall, we were closed basically the fourth quarter of the school year from mid-March on through the summer. And so there were some savings realized in power bills. There was no employee travel, no professional development, or no significant professional development activity during that time. And so there were a number of savings on our general fund accounts payable side as well. So at the end of the fiscal year, we had about $8.4 million available between those two combined sources. And so we feel comfortable recommending this payment be made out of that revenue stream. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you may have regarding the payment. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I did want to point out that based on our payroll schedule, we would anticipate, if approved this evening, that employees would receive this payment on December 18th, which is a Friday. Our normal pay cycle, we pay on the 10th and 25th. Being a shorter month, we pay the last day before employees got on the break. So they actually will receive their normal pay on the 22nd. And so this would be the Friday before that. And so they would receive this disbursement however they normally receive their check. So whether it's a direct deposit or a payroll check, they would get in the same form.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion for Mr. Salters or anyone?
I have a question, Mr. Salters.
Sure.
I know you said we're paying the FICA and the minimum withholding for state and federal. So you can use anything you like, married in one, married in two, single in one. What do you think that a full-time employee will come home with?
Well, so they will come home with a check that will be $1,000.
Okay.
And so every employee will see a check, full-time employee will see a check for actually $1,000, and probably it'll end up being like $1,000.93.
Okay.
And so, but at the end of when they file their taxes, they may owe a small portion of tax liability still on that, depending on what their withholding amount is, and that varies greatly, but among what their pay is, what their withholdings are, what their spouse's withholdings are, whether they're filing married, or filing individually. I mean, there's all kind of different calculations with that. But, the district is paying, a lot of that upfront cost to make sure they get this $1,000 on their check.
Okay. I know you and I, when we had talked about this previously, we guesstimated around $1,200 or $1,300 would take care of all of the taxes. With this minimal withholding being paid, what do you think the check would have to be to equal about $1,000 if we paid the rest of the taxes?
Well, so when we went back and ran everything, including the 22% federal, the 7% state, and the 15.5 or 15.3% FICA, it ends up being about a $580 differential. And so to pay, it would be an individual calculation to pay every individual employee to figure out what the $1,000 would be. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so that would take longer than we have to be able to get it done.
Right.
It just wouldn't be practical. And so what we did is we took the state recommended minimum from DOR, the federal recommended, and the FICA, and that's where we landed on the $1,000. So many employees in the district will not owe any more tax liability. Some will. And, you know, but it'll be minimal.
Okay, thank you. This is a question for the board. I know that this one-time payment is for the work done since March. What about retirees? What do y'all think about giving them a bonus? Because I know many of them retired because of COVID, and since we're going back to March, some of them have just recently retired. So is anyone opposed to giving recent retirees a bonus?
How much are you thinking?
I would say the same as the others, since this is, you know, we're giving them money since, since March. Mr. Stacy, do you know how many retirees we've had since March? Just a roundabout.
I think we had over 400 that retired last year. Again, that's a guess. I mean, I'm hoping it's an educated guess, but it's over 400. Because typically we have about 400 exits a year, 450.
And you think just since March, we've had that many?
Well, would have been last year, so that they would have been exits that exited from 1920 school year. Now, we've had additional retirees since then, but I would say we had about 450 retirees from, well, not retirees, I'm sorry, I'm thinking resignations. We had 450 resignations
Right.
in 1920, not retirees.
That's what I was thinking, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty high. I really don't know, JD. I wish I could tell you. I can find out for you, but
Mr. Salters, do we have any employment relationship with retirees?
We do not, and I was just going to mention to you, one of the reasons that we recommended the December 1st date is because we just done a payroll, and so we have active bank account information, direct deposit information, address information, withholding information on employees who are on the December 10th payroll, which is our current payroll run. And so by doing the December 1st date, we can reach out to those people. We know the checks will clear, if you will, because we know it's going to a valid bank account. And so that was the rationale for doing that.
And then, Dr. Talley, can you speak to how our employees who have stayed with us through this pandemic and continued working through it may respond if, they're not recognized at a different level than someone who has left the district?
Yeah, I appreciate you raising that issue, Dr. Powers. I do think that would be a reaction to folks who have stayed the course, have dedicated their lives, their health, their safety for the benefit of our students. I think they would, I think they'd be really hurt. That's my opinion.
I kind of see that as a morale issue with the current employees.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Mr. Oswald.
So why don't we boost morale and add a new hire bonus in here and maybe get some people to come to the district? Is that something that be considered? A one-time bonus for new hires?
Well, since we're talking about numbers, why don't we run the numbers and just sort of see what we've got to work with? So our total spend for this bonus will be 8.4.
Actually, it'll be about 6.5 million
6.5 million.
with the current employees we have and full-time and part-time employees we have on payroll. There's 8.4 available.
8.4 available.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What do we typically keep as a sort of nominal balance? Because obviously we transition from one fiscal year to a new fiscal year, and so we don't zero budget, correct? I mean, we had what, 16 million left over at the end of 6/30/2020?
Actually, we do a zero-based budget each year.
Sure, right.
And in a given year, we have either a surplus or a deficiency. Fortunately, we've had a surplus in recent years. And so that number varies from year to year depending on what's going on. I would be hesitant to even try to educate a guess at this point as to what that number will be for this fiscal year that we're currently in, because we just don't know what the rest of this year will hold for us. Certainly, we have a general fund balance that we maintain by board policy. And so,
And it currently is sitting at,
before this bonus is paid, it's sitting at $60,864,694.
okay,
And so,
And what percentage of that, I mean,
so that is of this current year's budget. That's an unassigned fund balance. That's 21.2%. Should you pay the bonus as described, that would leave a fund balance of $54,312,092, and that would be about an 18.92% fund balance.
And I've got a question as well, Mr. Salters. At the end of every year, in addition to the fund balance, we take money out and stick it in the capital fund. How much was transferred out of the general fund into the capital fund at the end of this year?
Zero. This $8.4 million is the source of revenue that, that surplus is where that source of transfer would come. And so there was zero money transferred this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
so we were anticipating moving, there was 8.4 available, this will cost 6.5. What happens to the other 2 million?
So the other approximately 2 million, 1.8 million would roll into our fund balance. And I would just point out to the board that, as I mentioned, this is a very unprecedented year. The state legislature is coming back in the spring. We're not sure what they're going to do as far as a step increase for employees. There was some conversation at the end of last year that they would try to pick that back up, potentially make that retroactive. I would remind the board that if they do that, they don't pay for the local portion of that step. We would have to, at least in a normal year, they don't pay for the local portion. We have to, provide that money. So there's also been conversation. We follow the Board of Economic Advisors very closely, and there's been some conversation about potential mid-year budget cuts. Those obviously are not set in stone. They watch the revenue forecasts and outlooks and do those updates on a regular basis. And so, in my opinion, the prudent thing to do is to take that $1.8 million and keep it in your fund balance. And should a mid-year budget cut come and we have to, do something to offset that, that would be a good source of revenue to do that with. Should we not be able to make other adjustments within the budget to be able to handle that? And at the end of the year, if that's not necessary, then that money would, continue to be part of your fund balance.
And so none of these funds being used are resulting in programs being cut or anything like that? I mean,
No, sir.
as long as we have clarity on that.
That's a very good point. No, sir, this is not as a result of programs being cut. Again, it's additional revenue that came in over our projections last year, and then it's unexpended, funding that was a result of us being closed for a portion of the year.
We also received rebates on bonds this year too, didn't we? Is that included in that money?
No, sir, that's a totally separate
Okay.
funding stream and not related to this at all.
one of the things that I really appreciate about this recommendation is not only did y'all do a lot of extra work to get to the figure that was necessary to get what we had talked about we wanted in the hands of our staff, to get to that $1,000 level. But also it provides this additional compensation for all of our staff. I mean, not only is it, our full-time staff and our part-time staff, but it's also our substitutes. And I think that's just such an important part of this recommendation because they don't always get that additional pat on the back for the work that they do. And I know Mr. Stacy can attest that our substitutes have just been key throughout this semester. And the fact that they are incorporated into this, I think, is an extremely positive aspect of the recommendation.
Yeah, I guess as I kind of thought through this, I'm always a fan of being responsibly generous, I think is a good way to put it. And so I think, providing a clean $1,000 is very generous in that they're not having to pay tax on that, and it ends up being $637.12. And so I very much like that. They are beyond deserving. Frontline workers, we will hopefully never see something like this in our lives again. If we do find ourselves in a place of excess, I guess my concern is knowing teachers, they're going to take probably $150 of this $1,000 and go spend on their classroom. And that terrifies me because that's just how they are. And so I would, if we do find ourselves, after the dust settles, if we do find ourselves in a place of excess, while I agree with keeping things in the fund balance, it's a nice, safe place to be. Obviously, though, there's no need for it to be too fat.
Absolutely.
If we were to find ourselves in a place of excess, it sure would be nice to give back to the classroom, because I think that's a generosity to extend not only to the teachers, but also to the community itself, because usually they're the ones being asked, parents and grandparents and everybody else are being asked to help supply. And of course, we only have limited dollars we can work with. So if we do find ourselves in a place of excess, that would be the only thing I would say to look at. If we could find some of those additional monies to get back in the hands of the teacher for the classroom so that they don't take some of this bonus money and go spend on the classroom. That would be the only thing I would add. As for Ms. Garris's point about the retirees, I think it's certainly a consideration. I don't know if I would perceive it as a slight if we didn't. I guess that, certainly, I hope they feel appreciated for the many years they've put in with us, and I hope they would not see it as a slight, the retirees. But I don't know if I would answer that question tonight because of just the lack of data and those kind of things. I would much rather answer the question before us.
The elves have been working behind the scenes, and they tell me that there's 136 as of September 1st. That would have been from July of 2019 to September 1st of 2020, 136. Thank you.
July of 2019? Okay, what about March of 2020?
We'll have to get that data for you because I don't have a clue.
So it would be a lot less than
It'd be
136.
Probably less than 136.
Yeah, okay.
Now
so
we have had retirees September, October, November. Every time you look at your recommendation sheets in those packets, you'll see them, and they would not be included in that 136.
Okay. Kyle, to speak to what you were saying about the teachers taking this money and using it for supplies in the classroom, one district did, in addition to their bonus, give teachers $25 per student for every student in their class as an addition to this. So maybe that's something we can look at if you're looking at 27,000 students. Maybe somebody has a calculator. That's somewhere around $675,000. And that's just, a flat fee. If that's something we're interested in, we could look at how they distributed those checks.
Well, I think what Dr. Guyton was suggesting is, depending on where the state legislature lands, again, and we understand what our operational budget for this year ends, if it looks like we're going to finish another year with the excess, we'd ask Dr. Little and the leadership team to come back to the board with a recommendation about how we can continue to invest in teachers, but maybe not through a one-time payment, but through more tools in the classroom which help instruction. which we could modify the operating budget to that. But let's ask our leaders in the schools to give us that, because they know instruction better than me as a board member, so.
I can also tell you, and I went over this during the budget hearings when I said that we should be giving step increases then. I mean, since 2013, at the end of every year, we have transferred money out of the general fund into the capital fund to the tune of, starting in 2013, 3 million, 2 million, 1.5 million, 3.5 million, 6 million. In 2018, it was 8.5 million. In 2019, it was 8.5 million. So, I mean, we have lots of money. And all of this is going into an account that we don't see again as a board because we don't request those reports. So to say $675,000 for supplies for students, to me, that's not asking a whole lot.
Jade, I like that idea. I'm just thinking here as there may be a way to do that so that we can guarantee that the teachers, if they did get that money, that they actually did spend it in their classrooms. So maybe calculating the price per student in the future, and that money going to the schools so that they could then purchase what the teachers need in the classrooms. But still the money going to those students and teachers. I do like that idea.
Yeah, that's, when I read about that, that's what happened was, it was just $25 was figured per student, and it was given as classroom supply money. I don't know
So
if it
not
was,
like to the teacher. at the
Right, it
check.
wasn't given to the
I don't
teacher.
think that's a good idea.
Right, it was used for classroom supplies. Like I said, that's what, I mean, we could read more about that to figure out how it was distributed, but it wasn't given to the teacher and said, here, go buy supplies.
Gotcha.
Like, they were required, I don't even know if it went to the school and then, they ordered through there or whatever, but yeah, it wasn't given to the teacher.
All right, board, are there any more questions for Mr. Salters or Dr. Little? All right, I did want to mention, the question was raised about, we have a couple of our board members who have family members that work in the district. And so I received an opinion from our attorney and I'll just read a part of it. And this is based on state law. If the proposed plan is designed to confer a monetary benefit which accrues to the same extent to all employees or all classes of employees, the conflict of interest rule of the Act is not violated by a board member participating in the discussion of and voting for a proposal to implement the compensation plan, even if it benefits a family member. So I just wanted to put that into the record so that we know that it's okay for our members to vote on this. So, all right, is there any other discussion?
Well, I hope we didn't pay for legal advice for that, because there's Attorney General's opinions on that, and we learned that during our FOIA workshop last year.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. All right, is there any other conversation? All right, we have the motion on the table. I will not ask Mr. Oswald to read that lengthy motion again. All right, so we'll vote. And I'm very excited about this proposal. So, board members, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Salters, for taking care of that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members.
And congratulations to our staff on well-deserved compensation.